Hello, welcome to another Gundam Operation 2 video, and welcome to another Buffed or Scuffed. If you guys aren't familiar with this series, basically, the devs at the end of every month will do what is called a unit adjustment, where they'll take a few suits on their, they'll put them on their website as well. They'll take a few suits and either buff them or even sometimes nerf them, and then, I'll usually choose a suit that interests me or a suit that interests a lot of people. And today we're looking at the Kshatriya, which is a pretty interesting suit that's been buffed because, technically speaking, if you still have the right conditions for this suit, like, it prefers longer range maps, you can still do really amazing with this suit on those maps. It's still, you can still do like over 140k damage just casually, if you depending on the conditions, right? Like, you have a really good team, or if the enemy team isn't just dogpiling you immediately. But yeah, and to help with that, the Kshatriya has a really good just toolkit where you have a basic instant stun with your primary weapon. You have the mega particle cannons that will stun accumulate in like 2 shots, right? Which you can also charge up to do just mega damage to generals and even some raids, right? Like, especially nowadays with like the high new Gundam having like 16 beam resistance. Yeah, that can dookie on them, right? So really good damage potential with that weapon. You do have the barrage funnels, which is a really great kind of like corridor AoE attack. If you put that in the right area, like when a bunch of teammates or enemies are coming around, you can build up insane damage, and even against a single target, and just keep them in there. Just you shoot like 4 continuous beams, and people that run through that will just continually just, oh man, it's a really great tool, AoE tool. Really love that one. A lot better to me, for me, in my opinion, compared to the Dagdoll's Dag Leaders. And you also have the ability to heavy stagger with your double binder cannons, which is really helpful in situations against raids or even just approaching a general. And yeah, so the Kshatriya, it just had a lot of good stuff. And then even, oh man, I forgot to even mention its skills. Where its skills, you have the shoulder binders, which you take a lot less damage getting hit in your binders, and I mean a lot less. I can't remember the exact rate, but or the percentage, my bad. But yeah, basically, you're gonna have to find a way to stun. You have to use your stun accumulation weapons to stun the Kshatriya, or you have to be like a crack shot and shoot in between the binders to stun the Kshatriya. Enough to where you have to get close and melee it, because that was one of the major weaknesses of the suit, is that it has 0 melee resistance. And yeah, that will lead into what kind of really hurt the Kshatriya, is that the onslaught of ranged raids and the coming of way better supports like the FF Sazabi. I should say better support, right? Because that's like our only other support at 700, like native 700 support, right? But yeah, so for example, like you have the Sinanju Stein, which Sinanju Stein is a really gross raid. You can just 2-tap the Kshatriya for a stun accumulation, or you can fully charge your beam rifle for a heavy stagger. And of course, since you have really good melee or even like a heavy attack, right, you can just massacre the Kshatriya as soon as you get close to it. If there's an opening, of course, and you don't want to dive down there in front of the whole enemy team, but you know what I'm getting at. Or something like the Delta Plus, where again, stun accumulation on the Kshatriya, going for melee and so forth. You get what I'm getting at, right? Or even against, if you're a general with like high melee damage, you can just, if you're really good at shooting in between the binders, you can stun lock the Kshatriya, because almost every general at this cost has more than one instant stun, right? It's really easy, especially if the Kshatriya gets stunned already. Really easy to hit in between those binders, and then yeah, you can just melee on the Kshatriya. And there's a lot of suits that have really good melee attacks, like the unicorn units, the Sinanju, right? And even though it's been buffed for the high new Gundam, when the high new Gundam came around, if this thing still had 0 melee resistance when the high new Gundam came out, oh man, the high new Gundam would just absolutely just murder this thing, right? I mean, even now with the buff to its melee resistance, which spoiler alert, you can it still can do some really good damage against the Kshatriya. But yeah, you also had defense mode, which is a skill that a little bit lackluster. It only gave you 30% more damage resistance when you activated your touchpad skill, and I believe since the way your shoulder binders work, it doesn't help you against melee resistance, I believe. So if a raid wanted to come up and just melee you to death, you'll only be taking 30% less damage from a raid, and that's just, you're still gonna die. Like it wasn't the best. I don't mind it on the Kshatriya because of those shoulder bindings, right? I can see why they didn't give it exactly active guard, but at the same time, yeah, if you try to save yourself, you start to save your skin by, like, using it like any other active guard, yeah, you'll just get clapped. Now, it's probably used more for like range engagements, but yeah, knowing how other people use it, they try to save themselves at close range and they get killed. So yeah, knowing that, let's see what they buffed on the Kshatriya. And actually, before I get into that, I do have reference data here, so we can look at why exactly maybe the Kshatriya was getting buffed. And if we look at the win rate for the suit, the average for a support at 700 was 50.7. This suit had a 48.3, which, knowing from our past buffed or scuffed, if a suit's at 48%, they're gonna get buffed. So yeah, this suit was needing a buff. And if we look at further details, right? The damage dealt, the average damage dealt for a 700 support was 81,000. This suit had a 78,000, so it was barely getting there, right? If we look at the amount of MS losses, the average was 3.0. This suit had 3.2, so it was dying a little bit more, which would probably, that correlates with, doing less damage here. And the rival win rate, there we go. The average was 48.3. This suit had a 44.7, so it was actually losing out a lot on the rival win rates. And I believe I didn't mention it already, the FF Sazabi is a thing. That's the most common support I've run into at the closer range maps. That even though the long range maps like military base, it was a pretty common suit to run into. So I imagine it was definitely losing rival win rates to that, or if it was the only support in a match, which will happen sometimes at 700, where if you pick a support, you might be the only support in a match. Yeah, you definitely lose your rival win rate to either a really good general or fucking, I don't know why. Sometimes it'll be a raid, the raid is going to murder you. So, so yeah, I can definitely see why this thing had a really lower, or lowest thing here is the rival win rate. So yeah, it definitely needed something to help not get eked out by other supports, keep in line, right? So what exactly do they buff about this suit? Now, starting off here, you have, for the unit features, the unit HP was actually increased from 25,000 to 26,000, which, yeah, I'm fine with that. You get more health. I like that. Your melee resistance was actually buffed from 0 to 20. Now, 20 is still kind of, but that still will help out against some generals for taking less just melee damage overall. You're not still taking like raid damage depending on how the general built their melee. It's still not going to do too much against a raid itself, but you can definitely do some builds now to where you can make your melee resistance. I believe this first match, I had over 40 melee resistance, which really helped out in trying survivability in situations where I'm in close range, right? So that definitely really helped out for me. And of course, it's just really nice to have that extra resistance, right? Definitely, especially when you have like defense mode as well. I forgot to mention that you can combine defense mode with that to get even more melee resistance, or just more take less damage overall. So yeah, pretty nice for tanking at the closer range, right? The high-speed movement was increased from 210 to 220, and this is actually a really good buff, because this means you're now the fastest support in the game. Just straight up, you're faster than a lot of the level 3 and 4 suits in this game, and I believe you're even tied with some of the generals at this cost, like the High-Nu Gundam, which is very interesting to note here. So you're now the fastest support in the game, and you're now as fast as some generals at this cost. I also believe the Unicorn as well. So you're as fast as the High-Nu and the Unicorn. So very interesting here that they decided to buff the movement speed, which honestly I kind of wish they did for a lot of the supports that are meant to be faster. But yeah, I like that a lot. And yeah, next thing here is they gave this resist move level 1. This is a really good buff for this suit, where you get a dodge roll. This is what the FF Sazabi has. This is what really helps FF Sazabi kind of stand out, where it doesn't get stun locked as much. It doesn't you can use that whenever you're getting melee combo to try and get out of that and maybe perhaps follow up. This is a really, really great buff for this Kshatriya to have. And it makes it even better for the Kshatriya because, well, resist movement, you still take damage while you're doing the dodge roll. You know, you have a latency dodge roll, essentially. Now, on the FF Sazabi, you'll still take, like, you know, pretty good damage if, you know, if somebody's meleeing you while you're doing the dodge roll or shooting you. But the Kshatriya, because we mentioned the shoulder binders, you take less damage. There's a very high likely chance that if you're getting stun locked from a distance, they're going to be shooting your binders. You're not going to be taking a lot of damage while you do the dodge roll. That's very, very good for this suit to have. And honestly, I should be doing it more, which is funny. If you notice in some of these matches here, which I forgot to mention, first match, really great match. Second match, I kind of am ashamed of a few parts because I really kind of fucked up in a lot of areas. So, but, you know, I still want to use it just to kind of showcase some stuff with the Kshatriya. But, yeah, if you look in some of these two matches, there's moments where, or at least I feel like there's moments where, like, I can dodge roll, but I just forget the Kshatriya has a dodge roll, right? I'm so used to playing the Kshatriya as it used to be, to where, like, oh yeah, I can dodge roll. And I think I realized that a little bit too late in some moments, but yeah, it's really great to have a dodge roll in the Kshatriya. So yeah, really nice. And finally, for the unit features here, before we move on to the weapons, the unit skill defense mode level 1 is increased to level 2, which is a major improvement over the other, the last defense mode, where defense mode level 1 gave you plus 30% damage reduction, you know, when you activate touchpad skill. This suit gets plus 60 resistance, which, mind you, active guard is 70%. So this is just right behind active guard. And like we mentioned, you can now have really good, you already have really good resistances. Combined with your shoulder buffers, you take so much less damage. It is insane. That really helps you out in tanking even some raids in in close quarters combat or from a distance, right? Really, really good buff here. Now, obviously, I mentioned this before. I think I would rather have it on the or not have it on the, rather have this be just the original form of defense mode, honestly. Because you guys don't know, the Shazar Team B has a defense mode level 1, which sucks on that suit. On the Kshatriya, I didn't mind it too much because, you know, they already have those really amazing shoulder binders, right? But now you add in the level 2, again, that's a really huge, huge damage reduction. So really, really good buff here. So now we go on to the weapons here. First of all, the submachine gun cannon, you know, your quote-unquote Vulcans. The range is increased from 250 to 300, which is pretty nice, more range to engage that with. And the recoil is reduced, which I didn't really have too much problem with the recoil, but hey, whatever. That's all he did for that, more range, I'm fine with that. The Binder Mega Particle Cannon ×2, which is your heavy stagger Mega Particle Cannon. That the overheat was shortened from 25 seconds to 20 seconds, which is, again, that's pretty good to have. Less time to wait on your overheat, and, you know, more chances to definitely if you do a heat gauge build, you can make it where you do constant heavy staggers. And the focus was also decreased by 0.5 seconds. It went from 4.0 to 3.5. So yeah, shorter time to charge those. Pretty nice. Now the funnels ×4 discharge, which, you know, the barrage funnels. The stagger accumulation value was increased, and the lock-on range has been increased. So now you can use those at a further distance, and they also will provide a lot more stun accumulation. I believe each individual funnel continuous beam will do 5 ticks of damage. I believe one. I think I tested this. Yeah, I tested this out in a practice match. One beam will stun in 4 hits, and you combine that with 4 different funnels shooting those beams, and you combine that with you shooting your other weapons at an enemy. Yeah, that will build up a great amount of not only just damage but stun accumulation. So yeah, that is a very, very, again, more range and more potential to stagger somebody. Just a really great buff overall for this weapon. And it already was a really good weapon in the first place, in my opinion. Next weapon here is the funnels ×6. You know, the pursue funnels, or as I like to call them, the follow funnels. The overheat was shortened from 22 seconds to 18 seconds, which is pretty nice, you know, for follow funnels. I don't know why it was so high with 22, but yeah, they made it 18 seconds. You know, if you have an overheat build, you can definitely lower that even further. And the stagger accumulation value is buffed. Now, it wasn't buffed too much. I believe it still takes 3 full hits to get a stun. But if you notice, if you go to practice mode, if you do 2 full hits, you almost, just barely almost not get a stun, accumulation wise. So you can combine that with other weapons. That way you don't have to waste that third shot to get a stun, or if you're, you know, if you're comboing other people using their stun accumulation weapons, yeah, you can definitely get a stun that way. So that is, I'm fine with it. You know, you get that. The overheat is shortened, which I really like, and hey, stagger accumulation's there, so nice. And finally, the large utility binder. You know, your binder's the skill for that. They made it to where they reduced range attack damage even further. You take less damage, even more less damage. Jeez. And they made it to where that reduces the stagger accumulation value from enemy attack, which I'm guessing if you get shot there, you take less stagger accumulation, which again, that very great buff for this. Kind of surprised they made it to where you take even that's something I thought was kind of fine in terms of like the damage reduction, but hey, the stagger accumulation, I guess, you know, so you don't get ranged out as much from stuff like the Stein. And yeah, that is it for the Kshatriya. And to answer the question, buffed or scuffed, yeah, this thing is definitely buffed. As you saw in 2 of these matches, one match we had a really great team to work with, and the second match, even though we lost because of a bomb plant, we were catching up to the enemy team, and you know, I made a few mistakes here and there, unfortunately. You know, I'm kind of unfortunate, right? But I still got well over 130k damage. Like, I believe both were at 140k damage, and one of the matches, you know, I did a bunch of just finishing off kills. I think at one moment in the first match on Colony Drop, I did, you know, I engaged a Sinanju Stein at range and just melted him because he wasn't trying to get out of the way. You know, you know, the stagger accumulation, the stuns with the suit. Yeah, this suit is it's just definitely buffed. It made what was already really good about the Kshatriya engaging at long range and even mid range. It made that even better. This suit is really gross, and now there's applications for this suit to work at even closer ranges. Now, obviously, you still don't want to be just in the middle of battle, right? You don't want to be just trying to clash with with raids and all that, obviously, right? You don't want to be going in, but there's still applications for you to kind of work at a closer range. If you have a melee build, like I did, I believe, for the first match, yeah, that will definitely, again, you can tank a lot of stuff now. And you get a dodge roll as well, which I didn't use too much, but man, once people start figuring, you know, how to get out of stuff with the Kshatriya, yeah, the Kshatriya is going to end up being a pretty scary suit on maps that is already pretty alright on. So yeah, again, to answer the question, buffed or scuffed, yeah, this bell pepper, it's spicy. It's spicy as fuck. Turns out that's not a green bell pepper, that's a fucking ghost pepper. So, yeah, that's going to be the end of this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like. Subscribe if you want. I'd really appreciate it. And, you know, type up in the comment section how you feel about the Kshatriya, or, you know, the newly buffed Kshatriya. Do you like it? Do you hate it? And, yeah, I liked the Kshatriya when it came out. It was one of my favorite supports to play. I stopped playing it less because of the, you know, again, some of the raid choices that were happening. You know, I picked the FF Sazabi. It's a really good unit. But now this suit's come in, and, yeah, it's pretty damn good. I'm going to have to take a look at which one I think I prefer playing now between the two. I think the Sazabi might still be better, but this is a really great buff to Kshatriya. If you have a Kshatriya, you know, if you're playing on a long range map, you know, even some of the closer range maps, it might not be, it's not a bad choice. I can guarantee that. Now, yeah, that'll be it, and I will see you guys later. Bye.